Right, welcome again to the Paradise Paradox.
Welcome to Paradise Paradox. My name is Aaron Battle.
I'm Kurt Robinson. Press subscribe, press like.
Yeah, or
Sound pretty stupid.
Send us whatever you want through Twitter, live at BattleAZ.
Live. We'll answer your question. No, we won't answer your questions live. We'll answer them on the next one, a week later.
You can send them to me live. I'll get around to it when I get around to it.
Yeah, when you send it, Twitter will receive it live in real time. We might not read it for a couple of weeks, but yeah, it's live. At Trouble Bubble, send me a tweet.
Today's topic is more about last couple of days I've been feeling a little bit emotional, anxious and nervous. And I can't work out why. I thought maybe I've been drinking too much coffee.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of my recent uptake of sun gazing. Maybe it's my over meditation with that free time I have. I don't know. I've been feeling weird. So I said, what's going on in the world?
Yeah, over the last couple of months there's been this currency collapse, which may be the reason you're feeling nervous. So
I think it is.
Yeah.
100%.
Could be related. So yeah, every currency in the world lost value against the US dollar over 2014. So the peso used to buy, 12 pesos would buy a dollar. But now it takes about 14 or 15 pesos to buy a dollar, a US dollar. And the ruble, I think, has lost about half its value against the US dollar.
Well, the Australian dollars followed suit. Yeah,
it was buying the Australian dollar was buying about 95 US cents and then dropped down to about 79, 80. That's
been over the last year. In the last month, it's dropped 10 cents easy.
Yeah.
So I've been sick of following it, sick of reading it, and I let it go since Christmas. I haven't really followed it. It's only been 4 weeks, a month, and I went into my local bank to buy an ounce silver coin when I realized that it's going to cost me nearly 400 pesos, not the 270 that it did last week.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll go buy Bitcoin instead.
Yeah.
That was actually my thought on the spot. I didn't even go to the teller. I saw the price, I walked out. I'm going to go buy Bitcoin instead.
Good. Well, yeah, that's another alternative. But I mean, the price of Bitcoin has been very volatile lately. The worst performing currency of 2014 had lost 80% of its value from January to January. But maybe that's just another, I don't know, a setup for a comeback.
I feel good about it because I mentioned to you in a previous show that the activity for Bitcoin has exploded. It doubled last year. So something's happening that's not being represented in its actual dollar price.
Yeah.
So I put in some extra change into the Bitcoin market.
Yeah.
See where that goes. But it's actually, I mean, if it is what it says it's going to be, what it could be, then from an economic investment point of view, I mean, you buy when it's low. So Bitcoin being what it was, and we've seen 3 big jumps in the last 5 years in Bitcoin. So I feel like all it takes is for a few more people to switch on to the fact that it is a store of value and not a currency, and that you can hide money in there. Okay, hides maybe not. Store money, store value.
You can hide money there in some cases if you cover your tracks right.
So that's another thing.
Yeah. Let's run an intro. Well, I'm still buying Bitcoin. I was buying when it was at 900, and I'm still buying when it's at 190 or whatever. I don't really mind because I am bullish long term in Bitcoin, and the other perspective is, I mean, the most boring thing about Bitcoin is the price, because it's going to change everything, and that's definitely exciting. So even if I lose my shirt in Bitcoin, but we end up living in a world that's not controlled by central banks, then I'll still be pretty happy.
So why are you so long-term in Bitcoin? Out of everything you just said, that's pretty something that people might be interested in. Like the question, why, for people that may, I think most of us know what Bitcoin's all about, but why does everyone say long-term in Bitcoin opposed to short terms? Now people do trade day to day, but most of us are long-term.
Yeah. There are a lot of people that are buying and holding Bitcoins, and they expect it to go up because, like you were saying, the transaction volume is going up. But that's fine. Like, you don't have to use it as a tool to try to get rich, and I guess it's not entirely the point of Bitcoin, but it's, you know, the fact that it's just that it has a limited supply might give it the quality of being good to store value. But the reason I'm long-term is because of the technology, the way I see it being used in the future, because it means that it decentralizes power. It means governments don't have control over how much money is printed. Central banks, you know, a small committee of people, Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan, or Janet Yellen, making these declarations that they're going to give money to all their banker friends. Bitcoin isn't susceptible to that kind of corruption or that kind of attack. You can't control it in the same way that you can that certain people can control dollars or pounds or pesos.
Yeah, it's important that you get it's an attack. It's an attack, completely increasing the money supply, is devaluing the currency. So if you're storing your savings, your net worth, everything's valued in dollars. So whatever we store in dollars, we're going to see it devalued. And it's interesting that gold and silver aren't being devalued to the US currency.
Yeah, or at least not as much. Gold.
Well, it's not evident straight away.
Yes. In a way of speaking, gold and silver were the currencies that lost the least against the US dollar over 2014. So they, compared to the US dollar, gold only went down about 2%, I think. But you're talking about how it's an attack on the currency. I think it's the thing about fiat currencies is when they're controlled by central banks, and when they increase the currency supply, that means each individual unit is worth less because you have a greater number of dollars or a greater amount of currency chasing the same amount of goods. I remember I had this conversation with someone a few months ago, and I was trying to explain this, and she said, no, not every country can print currency. If that were the case, they could just keep printing and they'd all be rich. I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
But we are all rich.
Meanwhile, I was like holding a 2,000 Colombian peso note in her face and saying, look, do you know why there are these extra zeros here? That's because the central bank kept printing money to a point that was ridiculous. Because, you know, I can look at a 50-year-old peso, Colombian peso note, and it says one peso payable in gold to the bearer. Well, you can't do that anymore. And one peso, I mean, you can't get anyone who is going to sell you 1 Colombian peso of gold. A Colombian peso is worth like 0.05 of a cent or something.
Now they're not even in circulation anymore.
No, you can't
we're talking old
coin.
money.
Yeah, you can't get a 1 peso note or 1 peso coin in Colombia. No, it's like 2,000 pesos is about $1.
So I guess people might be asking, like, why would they do this? Why would governments do this to their own people?
Okay. So, yeah, let's see. So if you're in government, and let's say there's no income tax, and you don't have a central bank, but you want to fund social programs or projects, construction projects, or public education, or something like that. The only way you can do it, or say even a war, the worst thing about governments, say you want to fund a war. The only way you can do it is by creating a new tax. And people are going to be very angry about that. They're going to say, well, hang on, this is our money, we worked for it, and now you want to take it away. So that's going to be very difficult for somebody in a position of power to weasel that in. So,
but that means nothing, because the government knows that the money that you personally have in your bank account is our money. It goes both ways.
It depends, but there's a point where you can't push people anymore. There's a point when people are going to say, well, hang on, I mean, fair go, mate. We're not going to pay you anymore. And they're going to get angry and riot or something like that. And
at least I hope so.
Yeah, I
hope people get a little bit upset.
Yeah.
Or at least want us to ask the question, or at least to have the question. That's why we're talking about it, because we aren't happy with it, and we've been able to choose something else. And I would hope that other people, not to follow us, not to take everything we're saying as this is what it is, but to ask themselves, what do they want?
Yeah.
And at least to know there's an option. But the other side of it is governments realise that all their people that are working and producing exports for the country that bring in money to the country, they need to print money to devalue the currency. Otherwise, other countries aren't going to buy their exports.
Yeah, well, that's the theory. But hang on, let's hold up a bit, because let's say I'm proposing this scenario where there's no central bank and there's no income tax. But say the government says, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to implement a central bank, and that way we can borrow money from the central bank whenever we like, and we're not going to pay immediately, and you're not going to be taxed immediately, but your children and your grandchildren are going to be taxed 20, 30, 50 years later. So people don't feel the burden, and when the government says, we're going to build this project, and you say, how much does it cost? They say, don't worry about it, we'll put it on the tab. And meanwhile, all the central bank is just, stacking up this debt so they can keep collecting from income tax in perpetuity for decades to come. Yeah.
I just heard last drinks being called, and someone's got to pay the tab. I'm not paying the tab.
I don't want to pay the tab either. It's not my problem.
With the example that I was going to throw out is that the governments are doing what they think they need to do for the right and for the benefit of the people. Like now we've got all the governments, well, not all of them, the majority of governments that are in the top economies of the world that feel like they must continue the game, where now we have other countries that are going to increase their money supply by printing more money, by devaluing the currency, just to continue in this game where the countries are competitive with each other.
Yeah, so like you were saying with the exports, let's devalue the Australian dollar, let's print, a couple of, say, 10 million, 50 million more Australian dollars, and then the Australian dollar will be worth less, and that will mean other countries can buy the products off us, and more products will be exported. That's true, but that actually means they're buying it at a discount, and it also means that the people in the country, because the wages are generally going to stay the same, say over the year, if you're earning $20 an hour, and the dollar is being gradually decreased in value over the year, even if you get a raise at the end of the year, you're still the victim of this system, because you are getting paid less and less, and your employer is not going to adjust your wages daily
No, of course
according
not.
to inflation.
No.
So you are getting less and less money in terms of purchasing power, but the companies are exporting more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where does it leave the people if they're being robbed by their own government and by the systems of their reserve bank in Australia or central banks in general? But the government doesn't know any wiser. They're just following what the last party did.
Yeah, well, some of them might know wiser, but it's not really in their interests to know wiser because it's not their money.
No. But,
so they don't care how they spend it.
So who makes the money?
Well,
because I mean, you look at the common trends in the US and in Australia. I'm sure yesterday there was a news article published that the Australian stock market has risen for the 10th day in a row.
Right.
Is that a surprise? That the companies that are exporting your labour at a discount are making money, and when the banks are the ones that are investing, because the banks are trying to make money too, the banks are investing in the same stock exchange of the top companies that are exporting your product, your labour at a discounted price, giving you less value, and they're the ones making the money. But I mean, it doesn't matter because their money's equally losing value as yours.
Yeah, except they're making money because they get the money first. You get the money like after a year when your employer, if you're lucky, employer says, it's time for you to get your annual raise. If you're lucky, so then your wages are adjusted, and that's when you can actually get the purchasing power again. But by that time, it's the banks have already been buying things at yesterday's prices.
And your government's probably going to change party and go to print more money so they can continue spending on projects.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is good for employment because we're creating jobs. That's a pitch, right?
Yeah, that's the Keynesian Economics view. Like, we're going to stimulate this economy. We're going to bribe people. We're going to initiate new works projects, and somehow that's going to get things kick-started. But I mentioned this to you. This is kind of like it's related to the broken window fallacy, like the idea that you can create wealth by destroying something, or it's the idea that you're going to look at things that are seen. So yeah, you see it when the company gets a government contract and they build a new freeway and all of the construction workers get jobs. Sure, you see that, but you don't see all of the money that they've robbed from you and from your children by borrowing money from a central bank.
It's a beautiful synchronicity. Siren in the background.
It's signaling an emergency.
Well, it is an emergency. There's robbers out there.
Yeah.
So this
Maybe
whole...
they're going to go arrest Nieto.
I think he's long gone. He's not even a real person. Now they just put a cardboard cutout in front of the mic. That's the end of question time.
Yeah.
But this whole topic is something we've been researching for years. So we got no problem talking about this. But what made me nervous was the fact that I saw it live in front of me, between me and the teller, when I went to go buy, in my attempt to store my wealth in a silver coin. I realized that I lost 25%. Easy, minimum, 20, more, must. 25% of value within a week. And then you investigate, so you look at, okay, how's the price of gold and silver being the most stable non-fiat currency money that's available at hand. You look at Australia, lost the same, if not more. I mean, we're back at silver and gold prices that we were a year ago.
Yeah, in Australian dollars, the gold price is up to about 1650.
So anyone that bought gold in last year has made money.
Yeah, or they've retained their money, depending how you look at it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're not talking about investing. We're talking about saving.
Yeah.
Saving value. But why would you be interested in doing that, you may ask?
I don't know, because that's a very long debate. Like some people will tell you, oh, why would you want to buy gold? It just sits there. It doesn't make money. Why not buy stocks? But I think the thing is, in times of crisis, in times of uncertainty, it never hurts to have a bit. But most of my money is in gold and silver.
You hear this word crisis a lot lately. I've been hearing crisis a lot. What does that word actually mean? Crisis.
It's a time of significant change.
Change?
Significant change, but significant bad change, or significant uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
And yeah.
I imagine kids crying. Like children.
Crisis.
Yeah, it's a crisis. Someone tripped over and they got a bleeding knee.
Crisis, emergency, yeah.
But I think
it's a big problem.
The problem is that many countries are now devaluing their currency together.
Yes, and yeah, so the Federal Reserve about 2 months ago, it stopped quantitative easing. It stopped creating more currency, and
for once,
then I think this is a significant factor in the reason that all of the other currencies have dropped against the US dollar, because like with the yen and the Australian dollar, the pound, those central banks, from a cursory look, we were having a look at some of the numbers the other day at the Australian dollar, the amount being created over the last couple of months, and it looked like the US dollar just stopped the amount of currency, or they actually took some out of circulation, but the Australian dollar kept on trucking.
Nice little gradient there.
Yep.
No divergence.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that actually you noticed that the money supply started going up as soon as Tony Abbott got in. It was like, let's do some good for the people, and let's throw a few more dollars in there by the hundreds of millions. Yeah. I don't know. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money.
So they're supposed to be fiscally conservative, but who gives a crap about principles, outdated, old-fashioned stuff?
Well, the concept of stealing is just too. It's variable. It's become more of a. It's become a variable. Not do we steal. It's more how much do we steal, and over how long, and will they notice?
Yeah. Well, if you work in the government,
we
get a
noticed.
license.
Well, the example that I used for the currencies is like they're all cruising at a nice altitude, and then they all jumped out of the plane at the same time. They all started losing value against real money, gold, silver, and just assets in general. They all started losing money. This is why things become more expensive. But what's happened in the last month is the US pulled the parachute, and it appears that the US is going up. But the US dollar is not going up. The US dollar is what it's always been, the US dollar.
Well, not what it's always been.
Okay,
It was what it was the day before, and more or less.
Well, I'm referring to paper. I
see.
It's bullshit. It's paper money.
Yeah.
But they've pulled the parachute, and the rest of the currencies are still dropping. So we'll see other currencies pull up and also pull the parachute, which is going to show the volatility between the currencies. But when and how that happens, I don't know. That's going to be in the next, I think very soon. In the next month, we're going to see some changes, because as I felt uncomfortable seeing the currency devalue that fast, and nobody seems to have noticed. Everyone's still out buying tortillas.
Yeah, well, somebody was telling me they saw some Vox Pops, like the word of the man on the street, and the guy was like, I don't really care about if the US dollar is worth more or less, because I don't go to the United States. So
I wish I was that calm.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, that demonstrates the lack of economic knowledge amongst the general population. People don't know how it's going to affect. And I've already seen prices rising here, like the sandwich shop around the corner, instead of 35 pesos for a sandwich, it went up to 40 like in a week.
I paid 12 pesos for a kilo of bananas.
Really, 12?
That's like double price.
They went. Well, I think that's also seasonal. But yeah, at my market, I saw them go up from 6 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was keen for a banana. So
Yeah.
I said, I'll buy those bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah, prices are going up.
Yeah.
I think we're going to keep seeing this. This isn't going to go away.
Yeah.
We need to make more money.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to make more money.
Save some more in certain forms. Gold, silver, Bitcoin. There's something else.
But at another example of things that aren't going up, the Mini Coopers, they had a big sale. They've all dropped price.
How much does a Mini Cooper cost?
Well, in pesos, for your normal version, I think it's, well, for the countryman in particular, it was nearly 500,000 pesos, nearly 500,000, and it's dropped to 399,000.
That's a nice discount.
So, the reason why I brought this up was because it was brought to my attention yesterday that I should buy one. And, of course, that's on the top of my priority list. But it was like, when did the world become so small that I related the idea of a Mini Cooper dropping in price to where are they built and what currency are their employees getting paid in, to why is there a direct discount? Direct discount from Germany factory to Guadalajara, Mexico. And that's about 25%. So someone else is having a few currency crises of their own.
So you said the euro dropped against the peso.
Well, the euro, which I know years ago was out of control expensive against the peso. Now it's down to 19 pesos per euro. And in comparison, the US dollar is like 15 pesos. So from a Mexican peso point of view, we've seen the US dollar go up and the euro come down. So all of a sudden, it's nearly, you're going to see companies that are selling European cars offer the same price as American cars. So unless you're a big fan of Chrysler or Dodge, why would you want to buy an American car when you can buy a BMW for similar money? And it's like, and there's a lot of fresitas walking around here that
a lot of posh people
that would like to invest in a little status, get a street rep up.
Right.
Anyway, that's the effect.
Take out a 20-year loan to buy a car or something like that.
7-year loans, who pays them back? You refinance. You only keep. That's why they throw in 3 years of free service so that you bring the car back in 3 years and do it again.
Right.
The classic automotive flipper.
Is that how they do it?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of disgusting. I remember a customer told me once, she was like, I bought this car a year ago or something like that, and I realized the amount I'm actually paying in interest is about 34%. So you get a car on finance, if you don't have a good credit rating or you don't think it through carefully, you can get really ripped off on those loans, those car loans. Yeah.
Well, you need to consider who's gonna buy the car as well. Because I hope she put in the devaluation, or it would have been closer to 50%.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it would have.
Yeah.
Because cars don't hold value until they get to by the time they're worth about $2,000, they normally stay pretty flat. So
and that car's only 5 years old.
Could be. Yeah. Should we take a break?
Let's take a break.
Press like, subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, send us a tweet at BattleAZ, at Trouble Bubble.
So, we're talking about the economic collapse.
In a roundabout way, I guess that's the punchline of what we're trying to come to here.
Well, somebody must believe it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of websites, like, for example, the Dollar Vigilante is one I read quite a lot, zerohedge.com. I've been following, years ago I started listening to Ron Paul, and he would talk about how there were bubbles, and the Fed would cause all these bubbles, like in the real estate market, in the technology market years ago, and then of course inevitably when you cause a bubble, you have to have a bust after that. The bubble has to burst.
Well, there's quite a few that were mentioning that bubble coming back in 2007 or earlier. Like Peter Schiff was talking about it, and Mike Maloney, which guys they probably weren't that popular prior, but they keep talking about it now. And it's a coincidence that a lot of countries are trying to get their gold back. So some other advisors are following the same information.
Yeah, so they're still concerned. Like there's still the question of what's real money. Like if US dollars aren't real money, or if central banks are putting more weight on holding gold than they are on holding dollars, then that's a little bit of a signal. So back in 2013, the Bundesbank, the central bank of Germany, decided to repatriate the gold. So after World War II, they were concerned during the Cold War, they didn't want to hold much gold in their reserves because they were worried about, shall we say, political risk. They were concerned about the Soviet Union being with East Germany right next door. They were concerned that something might happen and they would lose all the gold. So they were storing it in Paris and New York and London. And so in 2013, they started making requests to get back their gold. And I read an article just now, and the representative of the bank was saying, it's all on track, it's all fine, it's all on schedule, but it's coming out. He didn't mention it, but it's coming out very slowly. Like when they said in 2013, let's get the gold back, the Fed said, sure, we'll send you the gold, but it will take 7 years. So one has to wonder if they have gold in the Federal Reserve because nobody audits the Federal Reserve. It's very rare that anybody is allowed into the vaults of the Federal Reserve. So
it's an interesting case.
We
look at the gold, the paper gold, and how
paper gold. You mean like a gold certificate or a gold?
Like a certificate saying, like if you buy a certificate to say I have X kilos of gold stored in or stored by X, which could be a safety deposit box, or it could be on behalf of somebody. Like how if you only have a certificate for gold, which I believe Germany. Okay, I'm saying Germany, but we're talking about the central bank.
Yes, not Germany, not the people of Germany, not the government of Germany, but the central bank of Germany, the Bundesbank.
We're not the only ones that humbly make that mistake. Like it's commonly misnamed in nearly every case in the newspaper.
Yes, it normally comes up in a headline. It says Germany is repatriating its gold. But the central bank isn't necessarily owned by the government. It's normally not owned by the government. It's not a government institution, at least not in the normal way that we think about it.
Well, people have no control over the central bank. It's a complete separate entity.
It's not even in some cases it is owned by the government, but it's not a democratic process. You don't get to elect who's in there. So or in the case of the Federal Reserve, it's independent from government control. The government has no control over it.
The funny thing is, we often hear Bitcoin being referred to as like the digital gold, and everyone in Bitcoin knows whoever holds a Bitcoin owns the Bitcoin.
Yeah. So for example, with Silk Road, when the site got seized, Ross Ulbricht was arrested, and the government, the U.S. government, took all of those Bitcoins that were sitting there, all of the ones that people had left sitting on the site, and they sold them off, which I don't know how they did that before they even convicted the guy, but that's what they did. They sold somebody else's property, seized and sold it. Who cares about rules or laws or anything like that? People at the time, I heard someone comment on the Bitcoin group. They said oh, well, you know, when I buy drugs, I normally like to, I'll take $100 down to my local drug dealer and I'll buy $50 worth of drugs, but I'll leave $50 with him just in case, just in case I want to come back later and buy a little more, which obviously in that example, it's very silly to do that, but you have to, you know.
He might be your mate.
Yeah, it might be your bank as well as drug deal. Savings and bongs, that's what they call it.
Yeah, that's what they call it. But my point is, whoever holds it, owns it. And
Yeah.
this is Bitcoin community. They know this because of these stories. But it's starting to show the same things coming through with gold. Whoever has the gold owns the gold.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, how much is the paper worth in between?
Yeah, because with a lot of companies, you have this situation where they do something which is called rehypothecation, which is a fancy word for saying selling something more than once. So you give somebody a gold certificate or a silver certificate and say, yeah, you have 10 ounces of silver, 1,000 ounces of silver in our account allocated to you, or sorry, not allocated, but you have access to this this supply when you want it. But then they go off, they say they have, for example, 10,000 ounces of silver in their vault. They might sell it 10 or 20 times. Each ounce belongs to several people because it's just like with banks. They know that not everybody is going to come in and demand their money at the same time. So why not sell it twice? Why not sell it 9 or 10 times?
You're saying that they extended the fractional reserve system to physical stuff.
Yeah, because that's how the fractional reserve system started, when people who held gold, goldsmiths or banks would lend out gold receipts and give more gold than they had, or lend out other people's gold. Yeah. Okay.
I understand how the system works, but you can't. I was going to say you can't do that with money, but that's what you do with money. I remember walking into the office of one of my ex-employers, and I made, in conversation, one of my managers at the time said to me, overheard the conversation. The scenario was, I walked into a predominant bank of Sydney and asked, can I take a loan out against gold?
Yeah. Reasonable question.
Yeah, it's like it's a store of value. It's like it's
collateral.
It's quite normal that you put a block of land against a loan or
some kind of asset,
or whatever have you. And the guy almost laughed at me and said, "Oh, I believe you're mistaken. This is a what did he call it? What type of bank?"
He said it's not a pawnbroker. Is that what he said to you?
No, but that would have made more sense to me.
Okay.
What he said was it was a different type of bank. And I was like, okay, well, what are the other types of banks?
Right.
The bank that I went to.
Which bank was this?
HSBC.
Okay. All right.
I thought they're the international local, so
Yeah.
I thought they would be open to it. Okay. I came to them with an opportunity for business. He laughed at me and said no, we don't do that here.
Okay.
So I thought, all right, no worries. I soon realised that no bank, no commercial bank, I believe was the name.
Right.
No commercial bank does that kind of
gold
business.
As collateral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did a similar thing. I went into a bank and asked them for a personal loan based on gold as the collateral, and he said no. The fact that you have assets might affect your approval, but it won't affect how much we can lend you.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because the concept of being able to have the gold, let them. I thought this is going to be sweet. Right. I've got the gold. It's my gold. I'll let the bank look after it for me. They can lend me their money, They're monopoly, colourful sheets of paper, and I can take care of business with this stuff because no one else. Well, I'm not going to say no one else will accept my gold. They will, but this way I get to keep the gold and take care of business.
Right.
And I don't have to pay storage fees. But I thought that's their issue now. That's their problem.
Yeah.
That didn't go down at all. And most people that I tell this story to laugh at me. Which people that I considered quite intelligent didn't understand what I was trying to do.
So why do they laugh at you?
Because actually, the idea was, what, you're gonna walk into the bank with a kilo of Coke? That was the response. Well, Coke, I'm assuming not the drinkable kind, but like a storage of value. I mean, that was the mentality I was dealing with. So I'll leave that alone.
Cocaine is contraband. I don't understand what that has to do with.
Well, I'm assuming
with an asset.
I'm assuming this guy was living in the 50s and possibly in the US, where it also was at a time.
Right. Yeah. Well, technically, I've read a law from Australia, and apparently it's never been repealed, and it says that the Australian government can confiscate gold. The federal government. Yeah.
You want to hide any shoes?
Yeah, not many places where you can go. But yeah, I wanted to talk about hyperinflation for a minute. So a little history lesson. If you go back to Germany after World War I. So during the war, as many governments do, they took the currency off the gold standard, and that meant the government could print as much money as they wanted, or they could borrow as much money as they wanted from the central bank, and that meant they could fund the war. And the first time this happened, everybody was saving their money because it was a time of uncertainty, so they wanted to have a lot of money on hand if necessary. But then something bad happened. And the next time there was a time of uncertainty, the people knew that their currency might lose money, might lose value very quickly, and so they started spending it as quickly as possible. So the velocity of money increased significantly. Yeah, nobody wanted to hold Deutschmarks. They wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. So that meant the value went right down. In addition to all of the money printing that was going on. So what happened was the government and the central bank just kept on creating money. It got to the point where they were only printing the notes on one side because they didn't want to spend the ink to print both sides of the note. And people would do things like they would get paid hourly, so the man could give the money to his wife at the door of the office or the factory, and she would run to the baker to buy some bread before the money lost its value.
That is an extreme case.
Yeah, so they call that hyperinflation. Yeah, it's an extreme case. I mean, that's one of the best historical cases of hyperinflation in the last 100 years.
But the beauty between hyperinflation and your standard everyday inflation is what? Like, how does it go from? Yeah. How does it go from shit, I'm losing money, to shit, my money's not worth anything?
Well, I mean, there's a few factors. Like I mentioned, velocity. So when people really don't want to hold the hot potato, they want to get rid of it as soon as possible. That's going to mean the value is going down, but also the rate that they increase the money supply, or the money supply in total. Yeah, and so people would wheel these wheelbarrows full of notes to go and buy some bread. The same thing happened in the United States a few hundred years ago, like with the continental dollar, about 15 years ago, I think. It happened in Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe dollar went right down, and you can see Zimbabwe dollar notes of about $1 trillion.
Which last I checked were worth about $7 on eBay.
Well, they're worth more for their novelty value than they are for their face value. And yeah, then you have Argentina. So Argentina, some people joke that it's the national sport of Argentina to devalue their currency, because every 10 or 20 years they tend to have a currency crisis. So if you take a trip to Argentina, remember to stock some extra US dollars in your pocket, in your wallet, because you can take them. You're not going to exchange them at an official exchange, because that will only get the list value. What you're going to do when you arrive in Argentina, go down to the streets, find a guy on the street corner and give him dollars, and he will give you twice the list value, or say 100%, 180% of the list value in the Argentinian currency. They call those blue dollars.
I don't think we're that far away from that here in Mexico either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of concern that the Mexican peso is going to devalue as well, which it's happened twice before.
Right. So just about 20 years ago, they changed from the old peso to the new peso, and
that's right. It was in was it early 80s?
Yeah, I think it might have been in the 90s. It wasn't long ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the currency's been unstable for actually these last 20 years have probably been the most stable it's ever been, which is scary within itself. I think that the banks. It's pretty common knowledge that people hold silver here in Mexico and not pesos, but it'd be nice to get some debt here, so that when it does go hyperinflation, you can pay it off so much quicker, or at least you're locked in. You got your value out early. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, well, that's a possibility, but there is risk there, because sometimes central banks will try to bankrupt people by deflating first and then inflating later. So they deflate, and that means you can't pay your loan off, and then they inflate, and that means they get all the value. It's kind of the opposite of a pump and dump scheme, where you build up the value of an asset and then sell everything you can at its peak.
Well, that sounds like an episode of what the economic hitmen were sent to do from the U.S. Reserve Bank in their situations.
Yeah, well, that's kind of similar. I mean, in a way, I mean, the end goal is to kind of bankrupt people, but with that one, you bribe the officials. You get the officials to take on a lot of debt from their central bank or from other central banks, and then you let them starve.
And then, or you go back and you buy their assets and resources for super cheap before they starve, and then give them a job.
Yeah, and then tell them, the next time we need you on the UN, then you're going to raise your hand.
Your head or your hand?
Your hand. Your hand. You're going to vote for us.
Yeah, or you've lost your head.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have a choice.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say it's like Pablo Escobar's motto, plata o plomo, so silver or lead. Silver or by lead, that's your...
So what do you do?
Options.
What do you do when your government's playing these games and you're just trying to hang out in between?
I don't know. Well, that's why, one of the reasons why we're here in Mexico, because we think if something does go down, at least we know we're rather close to the supply of food. So that's one thing we won't really have to worry about,
Yes. Looking at first it was a joke, but looking at the collapse from a normal person's point of view, I mean, you've already mentioned on the street people don't realise what different currencies have to play with each other, like how they interact. Yeah. But if you go and type collapse, crisis, financial, economic collapse, whatever, any of these terms, there's usually an interesting article on like top 10, top 20 things you need to do or need to know before it happens. Yeah. And food is definitely in the top. It's in the top 5 because survival is like number 1.
Yeah, so a lot of people in the United States stockpile beans and rice and flour and these things which would be useful if there's a problem, gasoline or liquefied petroleum gas to power the stove, stuff like that.
I don't think I'm that crazy just yet. Like I don't think I'm definitely not keeping 3 months worth of food 3 months worth of lighters, or like I'm not keeping a bug out pack.
Yeah, well, you know, I think we're good here because I think we're so close to the supply of food. Like the other day, I went into Ricardo Corner, and it's like 25 minutes walk from here, and they have, vegetables, fruit everywhere, and I bought like a handful of mint and some other vegetables, and the guy was like, yeah, two. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, two. 2 pesos, which is like 15 cents. If I bought a handful of mint like that in Australia, it would cost $3 or $4. So,
and I mean, why is that? That's because the value between the farmer to the market is like there's like very minimal steps. In between.
Yeah.
So the
less middlemen. It's not like buying in a supermarket where you have to support this whole bureaucratic structure as well, I suppose, because you got this guy, maybe his family owns the farm, or maybe he buys directly from the farmer, and he just sells it there. And so, you know, even if the price is double, triple, quadruple,
that's for me.
Yeah.
That's for.
Oh, so I spent about $4 there, and I bought like potatoes, tomatoes, onions, a few spices, and a whole bunch of things, vegetables enough to last me for a week.
So food's covered. The next one's like water. Water's a big deal. But it's interesting to know here in Mexico, nearly every single community has a water filtration set up.
Yeah.
Already, I thought that was really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like water filtration, something that's already established in the Mexican street economy, in the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like bottled water to every house. Try to do that in Australia. Like that's just not. You couldn't do that in a weekend.
No. But yeah, it would be.
You couldn't do it in a month.
Yeah, you have tap water in Australia, but then if the thing gets contaminated, well, there's not so much infrastructure for people to receive water.
But in any of these cases where there's a crisis, you got some kind of government intervention that they come in to take care of the situation. But I'm wondering if...
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
Well, I'm thinking this guy's at my front door from the government. Where's his family? Why isn't he at home, cooking or cleaning or something, or reading to his kids? Like all these government employees should go home, hang out with their family.
Maybe.
Yeah, it was just. I mean, I'm thinking in the middle of a crisis, maybe they've got better value to add.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm picturing that scene from what was it? What was that movie with Brad Pitt where he's got the zombies, and there's like the whole world is falling apart?
If it's World War Z, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, okay.
I heard it was terrible.
Well, I liked it, but compared to the book, it's like very superficial apparently. Like anyway, there's a scene where they're in a supermarket and somebody comes at Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt has to defend himself. He picks up a shotgun and shoots the guy, and then the next minute a police officer starts running in, and Brad Pitt holds up the gun like, arrest me or whatever, but the police officer runs right past him and goes and tries to find some water.
Yeah, I think that's more the real case of what's going to happen. I don't think policemen or policemen are probably the first ones not to care.
Well, especially here. Because they do.
Well,
I mean, some of them care in some ways. But
Mexico's been called this term so recent, the failed state.
Yeah.
Which is why so many people are interested. But I mean, it hasn't failed at all. If anything, it's thriving.
Well, the state. I don't know. I try to, I'm trying to minimize my contact with the state. The business I do isn't anything to do with the state, or so I hope. I mean, the most interaction I have with the state is when I go to 7-Eleven and I have to pay goods and sales tax, value-added tax. That's my interaction with the state, you know. Otherwise, they stay out of my business and I stay out of theirs.
Well, I catch the buses, so
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some kind of tax in the public transport
Yeah,
system. But I mean, that's what it's there for, so I'm getting my value out of it.
Yeah.
It cost me a whole, 50, 60 cents to
Yeah.
catch my ride.
Yeah.
But, I mean, considering a failed state and the value that I'm getting out of it and the value that the government's giving to the people, I don't see how an economic collapse internally to Mexico is really going to affect the Mexican way of life. Like I
The
think,
only thing is the money. The money will be a problem. But, you know, like you said, a lot of people still have silver. A lot of people trust in silver. And a lot of people, like you mentioned the other day when you went to the bank and your wife was like, here, take this. And she, you remember you telling me this?
Yeah. She gave me this hamburger of cash monies.
Yeah. So people don't trust the banks here because they know what happened 20 years ago. And like just a few years ago in Cyprus, a similar thing happened. They shut down the banks for a bank holiday. And when people went to collect their money, it just wasn't there anymore.
It's funny that this is all going to, I mean, this term, international financial collapse, is because of the insolvency of the banks. But, I mean, I'm just imagining the Mexican banks definitely don't have any money because the people don't have money in the banks. Like, if the other banks don't have money, the Mexican banks definitely don't have money because, I mean, it's common street knowledge to keep your money where you want it, in your pocket.
Yeah.
You know, to keep it, well, it's what you have. Because if you have money in the bank, well, it may as well not be yours. And people know that here. So I mean, I think we're already there. I'm already living in the new world. Everything's already fallen over. It's nothing to do with me. As far as I'm concerned, I'm done with that.
Yeah. But, you know, there still could be a problem. Like if the gas, the price of oil goes through the roof, that would affect us. That would be quite a problem.
So what happens then? You would have...
I don't know. Then we'd probably be screwed.
You think so?
No, actually, no. It would just be... It would be different.
I know you smile. It'd be different. All of a sudden, I don't think we'd have such a beautiful variety.
Yeah.
You'd have more local stuff.
Yes. But, you know, even here in Guadalajara, you can walk out into the street and there are orange trees growing in the street. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who grow their own food, have their own little gardens, and people would be trading, you know, probably entrepreneurs riding their bicycles, selling fruit or something like that.
It would. I don't think it would take very long for the Mexican creativity and to take over.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of room for new business, but I think trading will be a seamless transition. I remember telling you last week when I made my first trade with a guy with a wheelbarrow full of sweetbreads, and I was like, here's a coffee, and he gave me 2. I didn't even know what they're called, but I would buy them again.
Conscious.
It was delicious.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's me done.
Yeah. So barter.
Yeah.
Might be. Barter would probably be an option. Apparently, that's what a lot of people did in Cyprus as well, because they're like, we're a small island. You know, most people own cows, or you know, they have a garden. They're farmers. They have an olive crop or something. So they're like, you know, we get money. We can trade. So perhaps it wasn't such a big deal for them.
Just to wrap it up. What are your thoughts on Cyprus, as in that was an experiment to see how the people would react?
Yeah, I was worried about that at the time, but then I mean, nothing has happened since, and it's been long enough now that it's out of the public consciousness. Like, people have ADD'd it out of their mind. So I think if it was going to happen again around this time, it probably would have already happened, you know, 6 months ago, because people had forgotten.
So you think it could happen any time, or is it not worth happening?
I don't think it's extremely likely, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a possibility because people in Cyprus didn't riot. The probability of it happening in the next 5 years, I don't know, maybe 20%.
I think it could happen again. I think it's pretty higher than 20%.
Okay,
Because
how high would you say?
you think of it happening again
Yeah,
to any country? I think it's 50-50.
yeah,
Depending on how the situation of the bank. Because you got to think about why did they do that to the Cyprus people?
well, they did it because they could steal their money.
So they can steal their money again
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
anytime. And all it takes is...
Yeah, I guess so. I guess there's such a strong incentive to do it and so little consequences. Yeah, it makes sense that they would try it again.
I reckon they would. I reckon they've pretty done it in between this conversation. It's just a matter of to work out when it's going to hit the bank account.
Yeah. Then you go in the next day and try to pull out your last $50 and it's like, sorry, we stole your money.
So how do you protect yourself from that? Just for someone that's scratching their head going, holy shit, banks steal money? Yeah, they do. And they do it well. Because they do it to everyone at the same time, not just one by one.
Yeah, well, it never hurts to have a bit of gold. It never hurts to have a bit of silver. Buy a vault, hide it in your home, get a safe deposit box.
Started a coin jar.
Yeah, with Libertades, Austrian Philharmonics, and American Eagles.
I know, I was talking about Bitcoin with the coin jar.
Oh, right. Coinjar.com. Yeah, I use that site. It's good. It's convenient.
That's where I started. That's where I bought my first Bitcoin.
Yeah, cool. I bought my first Bitcoin about two or 3 years ago. I had to put it, let's see, I think I put the money on PayPal. I bought Linden dollars with Bitcoin, or with dollars. Linden dollars are the currency of Second Life, the computer game. And then I had to buy, I don't know, I think I traded into another video game currency, and then eventually I got Bitcoins. And I remember I must have paid about 20% in fees to eventually get the Bitcoin, and I put $20 in there, and I was like, jeez, this is costing me so much, this is just not worth it. That Bitcoin went up at its peak, that one that I bought for $10. I lost one of them on a Bitcoin poker site, not because of gambling, but because the site got robbed. But the one I kept went up to $1,200. I've still got it actually, and so now it's $190. That's the highest return on investment I'll ever make in my life.
I wouldn't be counting your chickens too short.
Yeah.
Still plenty of eggs out there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed another episode of the Paradise Paradox.
Thanks for listening. All right, so yeah, press like, press subscribe, press comment, tell us a story, tell us how brilliant or stupid we are for our economic knowledge, and ask a question on Twitter. I'm at Trouble Bubble.
And I'm at BattleAZ.
Peace.